Hi everyone, Pat Contry here. You might know me from the Pat the NES Punk videos, my podcast, Flea Market Madness, or being the author of a certain NES Guidebook. The reason you're seeing me here is because this edition of the Not So Common Podcast is with special guest Boogie2988, and he's graciously uploading the video to his own channel for you guys to view it. So thanks to him for that. So sit back and enjoy as we discuss things like what it means to be a gamer, Gamergate, politics, weight loss, and a whole lot more. So enjoy. Welcome to this edition of the Not So Common Podcast. My name is Pat Contry, and my guest this time out is the esteemed YouTuber Boogie2988, Stephen Williams. Welcome, Boogie.
Hi.
Or Stephen.
What's up, Pat? Yeah, everybody actually knows me as Boogie, even in real life. Everybody knows me as Boogie, local gaming store, and all those places.
How do you get a nickname like Boogie? How does that come about? Besides people seeing you pick your nose. I mean, how does that actually happen?
Okay, that's pretty much what it was. I moved to Fayetteville after a very tumultuous time in the state of Virginia, where I grew up, the southwestern part of Virginia. And I was playing Magic in this huge multiplayer Magic game. And this guy sitting across from me goes, hey, Boogie. And I'm like, what? Because you with the booger in your nose. And I said, what? Because you got this giant booger in your nose right now, and it's literally got fleas dangling off of it. They're bungee jumping off the thing. And we've been staring at you this whole time. Every time it's your turn, we're like, when's that booger going to fall out? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just going to leave it there. It's cool. And he's like, please don't. And I'm like, all right. Well, anyway, that was my friend Ed. And then Ed, every time he saw me, he called me Boogie. And I was so interested in getting, like, I don't know, belonging to that community, and so interested in, like, reinventing myself anyway. I was like, all right, call me Boogie. That's fine. I don't give a shit. And so I'd introduced myself as Boogie to the Magic community, and I just thought it was cute and funny. And then that stuck. And then everybody always asks about the 2988 at the end of my name. When I was trying to sign up for Boogie at yahoo.com, when, like, Yahoo service email went live, it said, well, you can't have that, but would you like this Boogie with 4 random numbers? And so I just picked those 4. I was like, okay. And so when I created my YouTube account, I just used that email, and it was Boogie2988. It was my, I didn't think I was going to do anything with YouTube. I didn't have any clue.
It's not a terrible random number, but I have another number for everyone out there who's not familiar. 4.2 million, that's the number of subscribers you have.
Ooh. Hey, now keep in mind, this is a lot. I have a legacy account, so most of those guys are dead, okay? I don't get 4.2 million views per video or anything close to it, but I've had a lot of people click that subscribe button over the years. It's pretty awesome. I'm pretty lucky.
You started fairly early. Was it 2006?
Well, I created the account, this particular account, in 2007. And then I didn't really upload much of anything until something stupid, like just like this video of me dancing to Promiscuous Girl or something like that. I think maybe that was 2006. But then I didn't really like treat it like the channel that it is today until 2009. Really, I think it was 2008. Ray William Johnson saw one of my Francis videos, like the first time I ever did it, and he gave me a big shout out, and that got me up to like 10,000 subs, which was, I mean, even then that was a lot, man. That was insane.
10,000 subs. I always talk to people about YouTube subscribers as inflation, like how money was in the 80s first.
Oh, right.
Getting 10,000 subscribers before 2010 was like gigantic.
Yeah,
not many people had that.
And that got me, 2,000 or 3,000 views per video, which was amazing at the time. There's still people on the website pulling in 200,000, 300,000 views per upload. That's what Ray was getting, but I was just so happy to have an audience of people that gave a crap. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite YouTube stories is in 2009 or 2008, I think. I uploaded a video with this optical illusion. And it had just like this GIF, and I put music over it, Kevin MacLeod music. Thanks, Kevin MacLeod, for offering all that free music all these years.
Kevin MacLeod's legacy, he's going to be like Mozart 100 years from now.
They filmed a documentary about him, and I'm actually in the documentary. I did an interview for him. I hope they put it in the film. It's talking about how amazing and instrumental Kevin MacLeod was to helping build my business. I talked to him once. I sent him like a donation of like $200 for all the music I've used, and I was like, hey man, I hope that helps. And he's like, oh, it's not a big deal. I actually do really well for myself. And so I didn't realize, but he's made millions giving away music. He's a fascinating case study. People, you should watch the documentary when it comes out. I hope I'm in it. But he's made millions of dollars giving away his music. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you hear so much of his tunes being even reused. Like, hey, that's that one song you've heard used 14 times before.
But even that, like, theme parks pick him up, and like all over the world, his music is all over the world. And then those people will pay him royalties that it's free music, but they'll still pay him anyway.
So he touched upon a formula where almost like a tip jar version of royalty, where it's like, oh, use my music, but pay whatever you want. And some companies are like, hey, we would have paid a hell of a lot more anyway, so let's just give them some money.
Exactly. That's exactly what it comes down to, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. But anyway, so the YouTube partner program, right after that video went viral, and I say viral, I mean like 10,000 views or whatever, but I think it's got 2 million views now these days. It's one of my highest viewed videos actually still, but they sent me an email asking me to apply for the partner program, and I thought I was getting fished. So I could have, I think I could have joined the partner program as early as like 2007, 2008, but I ignored it for over a year until like 2009 and realized that there was actual money to be had.
And that was when they hand-selected channels to partner. That was before MCNs. That's when there was such a limited number of partners. And that was because of the Ray William Johnson shout out. Do you remember what the Francis video was that you did that got the attention?
Yeah,
speaking about?
It's actually funny. So I was a part owner in a local gaming store. My friend John had run it. It was called Gallery of Champions. For those Fayetteville natives, I miss that man every day. But his wife sold that to a guy named Chris Curley, and I put a little bit of money into the shop, not much. And I was also working down there a little bit. Well, before I put money in it, I was volunteering down there and sorting magic cards in exchange for product and stuff. And I was complaining about D&D 4th edition, which had just come out. And everyone that played that game was like super serious about it, right? And they all sounded like nerds, because the people that go to local gaming stores, they tend to be nerds. I'm a nerd. I'm not making fun of anybody here. I love nerds. Nerds are my favorite people. But one guy there by the name of Casey, great guy, he had a bit of a speech impediment, and he loved to joke about it. And he was always kind of mean to me, so I was always kind of mean to him. He'd be like, I can't believe how fucking fat you are. Look how fat you are. Yeah, let me see if I can do his voice. He's like, I can't believe how fat you are. You're so fat. And I'm like, well, at least I can talk like I don't have a mouthful of shit, Casey. And one day I'm making fun of him, and I'm making fun of all the D&D customers, and I do like the Francis voice for the first time, and I'm like,
I can't believe that DM put bullywugs in the swamp of sorrow. You can't put bullywugs in the swamp of fucking sorrow in Ascension game. You made me use my heal potion. I need my heal potion for the dragon. You know, and my boss, the guy who was owning the shop, Chris Curley, looks at me and goes, now that's what you ought to put on YouTube. So I came home and I did that video, and nobody gave a shit. It wasn't funny. But then my roommate's World of Warcraft account got hacked. And he was complaining about it. It was such a pain in the ass to get your account back. I made a video voicing his frustrations, and that's the one Ray saw, and he thought it was real at first, and then realized I was acting, and like I ripped up in my shirt and stuff, and boom, yeah, overnight I went from like 1,000 subs to 10,000 subs, and that got me really thinking I might have something there.
Wasn't that an interesting time of YouTube where a content creator versus their persona in a video was really, the lines were very blurred? Yep. James Rolfe doing AVGN, it probably took about a good 4 or 5 years for people to realize that's just an act. That's right. Not who you really are in front of the screen. The audience was not yet matured enough to realize that it's similar to anything else, like acting in a movie or a play or on TV. So have you encountered that in your life, where people thought, "Hey, you're just like Francis"?
Well, I had I had this decision to make when that Francis video went viral, and it's the same decision that James Rolfe or Joji over there at who's the guy, Filthy Frank, right? To decide whether or not just to be the character on YouTube or to be both, and I wanted to be both. I wanted to be open and honest. I felt like the Francis character was always just going to be a sketch to me, and I wanted to be famous. I didn't want my character to be famous. And I wanted, more importantly, to talk about the stuff that I wanted to talk about, the suicidal tendencies and the emotional stuff that I was going through, the physical stuff that I was going through, what it's like to be morbidly obese and live that life and be miserable and broken, and the abuse I went through. And that seems so much more important to me. So I think I don't know if I would have gotten lucky. I would have had a chance to get lucky, like a lot of the original people, like Fred, who only played the character, But I feel like I'm way more successful than I should have been, and I'm glad that I went the path that I did. But yeah, I think I could have easily deleted all evidence the same way Joji did, Filthy Frank did, and just be the character on YouTube. But I'm really glad I didn't.
So you weighed the pros and cons of being a real person for everyone, because you said you could share your issues, the problems you were facing in your life. Was that a difficult step to make, to put yourself out there, say, oh, here I am, warts and all, depression, weight issues,
Well,
people can just take more shots at me, or you're thinking, hey, if I help out a few people, then it's worth it?
Well, my self-esteem was so bad when I started YouTube, especially because I went into it right after this bad breakup. I went into it thinking, I just want to be a bad example. I want to show, because I was on disability. I had not been able to work for many, many years. I built a small business that I ran into the ground so that I could play EverQuest and then World of Warcraft like a job, and then I eat myself to 500, 600 pounds. I think my biggest ever was 580 pounds, and I just wanted to serve as a bad example for people. And I wanted to talk about the mistakes I made and how I got to that point and not to make those mistakes and encourage people not to do it. And I'd never thought that I could ever serve as a positive example. And I think sometimes now I do, especially now that I've gotten my life a little bit in order. But for me, it was therapeutic. Like, I guess, there's no such thing as altruism, is what they say. And I think that's true here. I didn't do it for self-sacrificing reasons. I did it because I wanted to get that shit out in the world. I wanted to validate myself. I wanted to get some of that pain and poison out of my heart and my head. And hopefully find somebody out there that could connect with it, which led to my wife. By the way, a lot of people don't know that, but I talked to my wife for the very first time when she saw a YouTube video in January of 2010. This is back when I had like 10,000 subs. I was finally partnered, but I was only earning like $110 a month from the partner program. I was on disability, but I talked about the death of my mom, who died in October of 2009, and she had just lost her best friend to suicide. And she had lost her brother a few years before that to an overdose. And so she reached out to me asking how I was dealing with it and was just looking for someone to share that pain with. And so it did exactly that. And, now we've been married for 4 years. And so the best thing that ever happened to me happened because I opened myself up to the world, and I'm so glad I did. And every good thing that's ever happened to me has happened because of that decision. The house I live in, the obviously the money I've made, the success that I've had, the career, getting to fly to New York and LA. These are places I would have never been had I just been Francis. I think I would have never got to do any of the things.
So the ailments, both mental and physical, that you've gone through have, in a weird way, led to success that you currently have.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was an outlet that you sought, getting yourself out there, sharing your experiences. Do you recall, or you probably remember, like why you put on the weight at the time? Was it depression, or was it just that you're in a bad spot? Because when I was in college, I know exactly. I put on, I think it was between end of freshman and sophomore year. I tore my ACL, so I couldn't walk as much. I was feeling depressed about a few decisions in my personal life. And when I play a lot of video games, I played a lot of like Rogue Spear on the PC. I played a lot of stuff like that, and the weight just came on easily at that time.
I will say that what I'm about to say right now, I'm going to list a list of reasons that I got fat. But I want to make sure it's very clear to anybody listening, they are not excuses. There is no excuse for what I did to my body. There is no excuse there's nothing. What I did to my body is not forgivable, and I will never forgive myself for it. And I don't expect anybody else to either, okay? That said, for me, I was getting very, very large even before I was in control of what I was eating. My mother, on my 25th birthday, sat across from me and said, I'm so sorry. And I said, sorry for what? She says, I'm sorry because I fed you wrong on purpose. And I'm like, what? And she says, I did it because you showed this desire for food. I used to steal butter out of the fridge and eat sticks of butter. That's how bad I was.
When you were a child?
When I was a child. And she said she fought me on it, but saw an opportunity there to keep me there. And so she's like, if you got fat enough, maybe I would need to take care of you. Maybe you would never leave the house. Maybe you would never meet a girl, and I wouldn't have to be alone. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's crazy, right? And so there are all these conversations that I would have with mom as a kid, and I'd be like, why don't we eat the way people do on TV? They're always eating salads and stuff when we watch The Cosby Show. Why do we eat so much worse than they do on TV? And she'd say stuff like, well, they're just putting on airs. That's not how people actually eat. All your friends eat this way too. And I'm like, no, they don't though. That's the thing. I've been to their houses sometimes. Sometimes they don't, I didn't have very many friends, and I was very rarely at somebody else's houses, but most of the time they were eating a hell of a lot better than we were. They weren't drinking 5 and 6 sodas a day. They weren't eating little Debbie snack cakes in between meals. They weren't eating pure garbage like we did, and my mom encouraged it. And so,
So she created a food codependency to keep you close.
Right.
To hold on to you.
And then it was even more systematic than that, because she would, She, like me, had an anxiety disorder. I didn't realize that as a kid, but I realize it now looking back. And not only that, but she was bipolar. And so she was like all kinds of messed up.
Sure.
And sometimes I wonder borderline schizophrenic based on some of the things that she said, but she was never fully diagnosed.
Yeah.
That said, she was mentally abusive, physically abusive, and I very rarely ever talk about this, but there was some sexual misconduct that definitely took place as well. So one of the ways that she would compensate for her issues is she would explode all over the place. She would hit me in the head with a hammer, but then take me out for pizza later. And she's like, let's go have some fun. I want to make up for what happened. Can we go and get food? Can we go to, Showbiz Pizza? And let's, or Chuck E. Cheese. I guess you probably know it's Chuck E. Cheese, but can we go? And sure, obviously I would like anything good to happen in my life. But most of the time I'd just be like, I don't really care. You hit me with a hammer, lady. I'm bleeding. I just don't want to bleed, But that was one of the ways that she would do it. She would try to repair the damage she did with food because she knew I liked food. It's one of the very few things I liked. Food and video games. And thankfully, she also encouraged the video game aspect of life, which gave me this escape. It kept me alive through my darkest hours. World of Warcraft and EverQuest, I think, saved my life. That said, when I became an adult, I continued to eat myself to death because I was fucking miserable. I didn't want to live, man. 20-year-old me was so messed up, and I had my heart broken through the very first girl I ever dated, and I didn't think I was ever going to date again. I certainly didn't think I'd ever marry somebody who loved me. I didn't think, I thought I was going to be an incel for the rest of my life, an involuntary celibate. I thought that I was going to never be able to have relationships, never be able to make friends. And, I would just eat and eat and eat because it was fun. It helped me cope with the pain. And when a doctor would tell me I was killing myself, I'd say, good. They'd say, you're going to be dead by 30 the way you're eating. I'm like, if I eat more, can I be dead by 25? That'd be way better, because I wasn't strong or weak enough to take my own life, but I was strong enough to eat, or weak enough to eat,
So when you suffered all this abuse at the hands of your mother, were you able to seek help? Did other people notice what was going on in the household? Did they ask questions?
I wrote a teacher on Facebook who was taught at my school. And I asked her one day, just straight up, I sent her a message after friending her, and I said, did you know what was happening in my home? And she didn't respond for about 3 weeks. She logged into Facebook all the time, but she didn't respond. But at the end of that 3 weeks, I thought I put her on the spot, so I did not want anything.
This was after you were...
Yeah, this is literally 3 years ago. And she finally wrote me back, and she said, yes, we knew what was going on. We didn't think it was as bad as we now know it was. But your mother was a very volatile person, and we thought that if we intervened, she might kill you or worse. I don't know what's worse than killing me. Right. And she's like, so we did the best we could by trying to create a happy environment for you at school and outside of your home. And if we ever knew it was as bad as it was, we would have intervened. And so my brother knew, and my sister knew, but they, again, did not know. They dealt with a fraction of what I dealt with, a fraction. My sister got a lot more stuff from my dad than I did. She got some very inappropriate behavior from him, if you can imagine, fill in the gaps what I'm talking about there. And obviously my dad, I barely knew him. But my brother, he was kind of protected by my dad and my grandfather, and he had that. So he dealt with way less. But I don't blame either of them because they had their own lives to lead. They were adults long before I was. And they would call in and check on me. Brian would take me up to Blacksburg, Virginia. I played Gauntlet for the very first time in the arcade right there on campus. It was wonderful, and he did his best, but he really didn't know what I was going through, and he wasn't in a place to help. He had his own life to figure out, And he did eventually help. My brother did when I was 20. He's the reason I moved to Arkansas. He was teaching down here, and he opened up his home to me and helped me get established here, and I've lived in this town ever since and been very happy since.
So it's good that you've come together closer with your brother. What happened to your mother? Did she get help at some point?
Well, the weirdest part about her was the dichotomy of her. And so she taught Head Start professionally and got Teacher of the Year some 7 times out of her 23 years teaching in the state of Virginia. She was an incredible teacher and a wonderful child advocate. She made up for the damage she did to me tenfold, 100-fold, by getting children out of abusive situations, getting parents off of welfare and getting them to go back to college, helping them get GI grants, helping some of the kids that she taught go to college and graduate. The incredible things that she did outside of her home made it almost impossible to believe that she was capable of doing the things that she did to me. And in fact, I actually had a therapist once tell me, after going through the first session and telling them everything, the therapist set her notebook down and says, "Why do you feel the need to lie to me?" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "I know your mother. She's not capable of these things." And so it just this bizarre dichotomy. It's almost as if it only existed in our head, my brother's head, my sister's head. And I guess my father too, who, God, the things she did to that man, the things she did to that, she just took him apart like it was a science experiment, like a cadaver, man, over years and years and years and years. She killed that man. I mean, just
mentally just picked them apart.
Right, but even physically, he died of cancer.
Really?
He weighed 78 pounds or something like that when he died of cancer. He was an alcoholic. He drank himself to death. The systematic abuse that he endured at her hands and the things it did to him just ruined him.
She forced him to drink, or was codependent?
Oh no, he was drinking when he was 12 years old. He was moonshining. He was bootlegging moonshine.
Oh,
when he was
moonshine.
As a teenager, yeah. So I mean, he was naturally going to do it, but she fostered it in him and used it as a codependency, the way she did food with me. But anyway, at the end of the day, those are the reasons I got so big, and those are the reasons I made those decisions. They're not excuses. I had to do better. I should have done better. And I'm disappointed that I didn't, but I'm doing better now. A lot of viewers don't know, but I got gastric bypass on August 1st of this last year. I've lost since the surgery 70 pounds. And then prior to the surgery, I had to lose about 50 pounds to get the surgery. And so we're looking at a little over 110 some pounds total. I guess that adds up to 120. So it's a little less than that, but, and I'm at the 3-month mark and I'm down 120 pounds from where I started. So,
that's fantastic.
My doctor told me to expect between 5 to 10 pounds of weight loss a month from here on out for the next year and a half. I'm hoping it'll be more than that. I'm really pushing it to try to be more than that. But I should lose within the next year another 120, 150 pounds.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that again. I'd like to get back to this though, because it's really interesting to me that the abuse you suffered, and you've done very well to come to terms with it. Did your mother ever come to terms with what she did? Did she ever face it head on and admit to her behavior?
We tried to talk about it a few times. I always wanted to be in the role of the good son. I always want to please people. That's something that's a big flaw of mine, and I always want to try to help people. And so I really wanted to help my mom as best I could. I drew lines. Like at some point, she wanted me to move back home, and I told her no. And sometimes she would want me to help take care of her, and I couldn't. I knew I couldn't, so I didn't. Stuff like that. But, when it came to going home for Christmas, I went home every year. My brothers and my sisters didn't, but my brother's sister didn't, but I did. I'd go home for my birthday too in the summer. So I'd visit her twice a year, stay with her for a week and spend some time with her. And I was there when she died. And sometimes we would talk about it. But for the most part, the abuse continued. Never physically after I turned 18. Occasionally I'd visit and she'd chuck something at my head or something like that, or she'd slap me or something like that, but nothing. I mean, I was 3 times her size, so what are you going to do to me, right? And she tried her best to make up for it, but she was still really just horribly miserable and horribly broken. But on her deathbed, they called me and told me she was dying, and I went there and I stayed with her for the last 3 days before she died. And she was in a medically induced coma for the last few days. I think it might have been more than 3 days. I'm not sure exactly how long it was, but before they put her in the medically induced coma, I had a chance to speak with her, and she said something that stuck with me ever since. She looked at me and she says, "I'm sorry." And I said, "Sorry for what?" And she says, "I ruined your life." And I said, no, you didn't. I said, "I like me, Mom. Don't you like me?" And she goes, "I love you." And I said, "Well, because of the things we went through, I became the person I am, and I'm happy with me. And I think you should be happy with me too." And she says, "I am." And then that's it. And then she cried for my brother and kept asking where my brother was. And I kept telling her, "He's not coming. He's not coming. He's not going to come." And he never did. He wasn't able to make it.
He wasn't able to make it?
Yeah. So... But that's the closest to reconciliation we got. But it meant a lot. I mean, it meant a lot, to hear her say that. So, It was really funny because the way she died and the last few days that I spent with her was like out of a movie. It really was. Like I couldn't have scripted it better. I couldn't have, there's nothing to embellish there because it was perfect. It was just exactly.
You got the closure you wanted.
Right. But it was just as heart-wrenching as you can imagine. And, they called me the night that she was dying and they're like, your mother's dying. There's nothing we can do to help her. We're going to give her some morphine to help her along and keep her comfortable. If you want to be here while we do that, we'd like you to come down. And I was like staying at the hospice, the hospitality place at the hospital there in Abingdon or Bristol, Virginia. And so I came down and they gave her morphine and turned off the machines and I held her hand until she died. And
so even at the end, you couldn't feel any anger towards this person. You only could feel,
well, I might be the angriest person Francis is not just a character. He is kind of that part of me that's real broken, and I'm angry about life and I'm angry at like the situation, but I was never really angry at her. Because she was as much a victim as I was. Her parents did all kinds of terrible things to her. She was sexually molested by 2 different uncles, raped by 2 different uncles, and it just messed her up for life. And she tried really hard, and she was like such a good person. She did so many good things, and so it's hard to. My brother and my sister kind of idolized her for a while, and I think maybe still does. My brother kind of sees her as pretty awful. But for the most part, I think he sees her as starting to see her more the way I see her. I've always saw her as a person who had the deck stacked against her, but did as good as she could with it. And honestly, did better than most people can with a deck stacked in their favor, And so, yeah, she fucked me up bad. And some of it was straight up on purpose, but it's hard to be that upset about it. It doesn't matter because I'm going to die one day anyway and it'll all be over. So it doesn't, the earth will fall into the sun. I'm a nihilist. So embracing my nihilism made it a lot easier. I
would say, I feel if you've handled this better than probably 99% of people could probably handle it. I can't picture someone that probably could have handled systematic abuse to the extent you have. I wonder, this is me just thinking out loud, I wonder if your mother doing so much good work for other children and people that were disadvantaged and needed help was her own sort of penance versus the bad behavior at home, or maybe that was her way to, maybe that was her taking it in and then expelling the darkness back out to others. I don't know.
I tell you that both me and my brother have done something very similar, and I don't think I've done a fraction of what my mother has done. I don't think I've done a fraction of what my brother has done. But I will still counsel fans from time to time who need help with their weight issues or their family issues, their depression issues, or suicidal thoughts. And I've helped with putting out that positive message out there. My brother, he worked at the CDC for many years. He's one of the reasons you can't get lead toys here in America anymore. Lead painted toys, is he's active on that. He's written grants that have helped cure diseases. There's no, like I said earlier, there's no such thing as altruism. Nobody does this other than to please themselves. Nobody does anything other than to please themselves. But we have this innate drive in us that say we have to help, we have to do better, we have to do good. It's what helps me, my brother, and my mother sleep at night. And so maybe it is partially penance because I was a teenage shitlord on the internet, for a long time. Maybe I'm making up for that part of it.
Really?
Yeah.
What did you do that was bad on the internet?
Man, I hate, God, I even hate to talk about. Back when 4chan was brand new, in the pre-Boxy days, I was very active there, and I would read like other awful websites that showed like people dying and stuff, and like I would look at all the really messed up stuff on the internet. Nothing like illegal, and I was never into anything like that, but just like road accidents or war footage and stuff like that. I was fascinated with it. And Tub Girl, like I would post pictures of Tub Girl on Christian message boards to troll people, or I would like play online games, Warcraft 3, and I would like just type shitty things into chat, and that persisted right up to like even when I was playing League of Legends. Sometimes I would pretend to be Korean in League of Legends to upset people and just troll people, And I mean,
that was your way of lashing out to get some of the anger out,
right? And I've never doxed anybody. I've never sent a box of shit to anybody's house. I've never sent a death threat. I've never done a personal attack. What people consider to be trolling these days, I consider to be illicit, illegal fucking activity. You pricks. Trolling back in the day used to be more about saying nonsensical things, or maybe inflammatory things, or you know, maybe like probably the worst thing I ever did is posting pictures of Tub Girl in a place where it doesn't belong. Don't Google that. If you've never seen it, you don't want to see it, by the way.
I've always been afraid to. I've heard it forever, and I'm always like, I don't want to.
It's really awful. It's really awful.
Yeah,
There's a lot. There's much worse out there, but you know, but again, I still regret that. You know, I wish I didn't do that. You know.
And that was until I guess until like your mid-20s, about late 20s.
Oh, geez, really? All right, I was in my 30s, really.
Oh, in your 30s?
Yeah, I was in my 30s.
It took you longer to grow up than.
All right. But again, it was never what these kids do today. It's not swatting somebody. It wasn't like, you know, attacking some woman for showing her boobs on the internet. It was more just like. It was more clean-hearted fun. More
clean-hearted fun.
Yeah,
as clean-hearted as Tub Girl.
As Tub Girl can be, right? Exactly. You know, but I still regret it. I mean, I'm making excuses. I wish I hadn't done
what
it.
got you past that, over that trolling hump, where you figured, okay, maybe it's not the best use of my time and energy to screw with other people online? Was there a defining moment, or you just said, I'm getting too old for this, or this really is sort of pointless?
I think I just kind of grew out of it, really. You know,
grew out of it.
You know, I mean, I would type in just silly things into EverQuest. Inflammatory things in EverQuest, sometimes offensive humor. You know, I really was attracted to offensive humor for a really long time.
Edgy humor.
Right, edgy humor, right. And then World of Warcraft, I did a lot less of it, but still did it occasionally. And by the time I was done with World of Warcraft, I was done with that. I was just like, I don't know, this just doesn't really feel right anymore. You know, until I started playing League of Legends, and that had the worst toxic community I'd ever been part of. And so, like, I started playing League of Legends right as it came out of beta. And I just, oh God, the people there were just miserable, miserable monsters. And I was like, these people deserve a little bit of tomfoolery. These people deserve a little bit of nonsense in their lives. So here's what I would do. Here's my League of Legends stuff. I would log in, and I would say, good luck, have fun, me Korea, smiley face. And most of the time, everyone would just ignore that, and I would just play the game. But every once in a while, somebody would go, are you from Korea? And I go, yeah, me Korea. And they would say, oh, that's cool, man. And then, again, I would just play the game. But every second or third game, somebody would be like, go back to your fucking servers, you filthy fucking animal piece of shit, motherfucker. And I would like start typing in, well, at least we have healthcare, fat America. Oh, you big fat America. Eat another fat cheeseburger, you fat America. Oh, you cannot afford healthcare. Oh, that's why you play free game, because you can't afford real game, fat America. You know? And I don't know. Just when I find that one racist, bigoted piece of shit, I would just ruin the game for everybody. I don't know why I was like that, but.
Did you obviously or not? You're from the South. Did you grow up with a lot of racism around you? Did you see it a lot everyday life?
Yeah, a lot. And I'll tell you this, and I don't even know if I should admit this, but when I was 10, 12, 13, you know, my mom had some this family, a friend that's part of this big family of people who are African American, and they all did drugs, and they were in and out of jail all the time, and having a lot of financial trouble, and very sexually promiscuous, and a lot of negative qualities in that family. And they were the only black family in a 500-mile radius. And so it was very easy to associate the negative things that I saw with that family. And my mother was doing me no favors because she would reinforce that stuff. Fortunately, I did watch a lot of television, and I began to question that stuff because of things like the Cosby Show and stuff. I'd be like, I don't know. I don't think every black family's like that. My mom would tell me all the time, no. That's just you know, that's just one group of families. That's bullshit. That's not how it actually is. And well, anyway, my mom started dating a member of that family. Oh. And that kind of really shook things up. But it wasn't until I went to Upward Bound. I have a story about the black guy she was dating. So after my dad got sick, so she waited the appropriate amount of time, I think. But she started dating this guy, and we're talking 1984, because Legend of Zelda was on the shelf, and I really wanted to own that game, but Mom couldn't afford it.
That would have been 87.
Is that 87? So we saw it in Hills, and I would just sit there as a little chain store in the South, and I would stare at the cartridge. And I'd stare at the box, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to play this game. I had borrowed my friends for like 2 days, but that's not enough to do anything in it. And I'm like, one of these days I'll own this game. And he saw me do that, and he was trying to win my favor, so he shoplifted it for me.
Oh, his heart was in the right place.
Yeah, he came out to the car and pulled it out of his pants in front of me and goes, I got this for you, kid. And I'm like, oh my God, I like your new boyfriend, Mom. Well, anyway, so I ended up going to this program called Upward Bound when I was 15. And I got assigned a roommate. Boy, I'm going to have to send him this video, too. I got assigned a roommate by the name of KM. Kermit was his name. Great guy. And we ended up becoming friends. And I love that man to death to this day. But because my roommate was black, I was uncomfortable. And so he wanted to move in with his friend Delmer, who also had a Commodore 64, so they could play games together and hang out. I did not object to that. In fact, I encouraged it because my roommate was black. And it's because I didn't know what to expect. I had no clue, but I thought it was going to be difficult to connect with them or things along that lines. I mean, I was genuinely straight up racist. That was the most racist thing I'd ever done in my life.
Even though Upward Bound was a program for kids that were like overachieving, right? So
overachieving and underprivileged. And so, a good third of that a good third of Upward Bound that year was African American, as it routinely was in our area, because those were often some of the most underprivileged people in our area. So anyway, then I met his best friend, a girl by the name of Danielle, DJ, and we ended up dating all summer. She's also African American. And between KM and Danielle, they taught me everything I knew was wrong. And how fucking stupid I was.
Yeah.
And I felt like just so bad. And that's one of the reasons, like, people are always like, Boogie, you are too lenient on racists. You're too lenient on Nazis. You're too lenient on people who are bigots. But that's the thing. I think that even, and I've read stories like this, when the worst piece of garbage, like Klan member, meets the right person of color, they're going to change their mind. I genuinely believe that.
It's possible. It's not a guarantee. I mean, there's a story of the one African-American guy who's converted. I think he's gotten 40 Klan members out of the Klan. I forget.
Right. That's the guy I'm talking about. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I think most of the people that think that way are wrong, genuinely wrong, and they have a terrible misconception. And when given the opportunity, they will change their misperceptions.
It's exposure therapy. It's familiarity.
Exactly.
The more you're exposed to something, the less fearful you are. The more you're familiar with it, the more you're accepting.
Yep.
That's just the way it is. Right. I mean, in my neighborhood, we only had one black family. And wow, probably within 8, 9, 10 blocks, they were the nicest people on the planet. It was and plus they were Muslim as well. The only Muslims I knew, like, ever when I was a child. So it was the husband and wife and 6 daughters, and they were all like the best people. So I guess I got lucky then as a child, realized, oh, this is my first and regular exposure to African Americans, and they were like a model family to me. At the time. I mean, I probably was even jealous of their family versus mine in terms of the stuff they had and how nice they appeared to each other. And I was probably jealous. But if you're not growing up with that at all, or your only exposure to African Americans is what you see on TV, say in the South, or you have a racist uncle, or it doesn't have to even be the South. There's racists all over. In the Northeast, there's racists. The Midwest and California, they exist everywhere. And there's towns even 30 minutes away from me that are known for having Klan members in Southern California.
Right. I mean, right here in obviously I'm in Arkansas. And so I'm just a few miles up from the birthing place of the Klan. I forget the name of the city. But to this day, they have you can Google it right now. They have a billboard that declares their city is all white and always will be as you come driving into the town. I forget what the name of that city is, but it's literally 40 minutes up the road. And so it's really bizarre. I live in a very progressive area. Northwest Arkansas is very progressive. We're the home of Walmart home office and J.B. Hunt and Tyson headquarters, and also like 1,500 smaller businesses, and a lot of money here and a lot of college towns. It's very, very open-minded and progressive. It's really nice here.
I think that's what's happening to a lot of places in the Midwest and in the South. They're becoming, red versus blue. A lot are becoming more purple because a lot of the cities, or in the cities, you have people from all over gravitate for jobs.
Right.
Tech jobs are coming to places. I think some place down south, they just turned down having an Amazon warehouse there. I forget where it was. This happened a few weeks ago.
Wow.
So big companies, once they move into an area, they're going to attract people and more jobs, and people from all over will go there to save money, lower taxes. Like Texas is becoming more and more quote unquote purple. Some areas of Texas are extremely or very progressive, like Austin. So you give it a matter of time, I think you're going to have more of a mix, and then hopefully, antiquated feelings die out.
Right,
right. That's what you hope. You hope it's just that the next generation is the last to think that way. You hope.
I will tell you that girl that I referred to, Danielle, we dated off and on for the next 7 years. And she came from an abusive background as well. So it was always a very tumultuous time, but we loved each other very, very deeply. And we were best of friends until she died at the age of 39 2 years ago of breast cancer. And, I spoke to her pretty much a couple of days before she died. And we loved each other in a very special way, like more like family than any other way, I think. But I got to spend a lot of time with her, and I will be frank, her family was very rude to me sometimes because of the color of my skin, and some of her family and friends were very rude to me because of the color of my skin. So and then more importantly, the lesson I learned was that I saw how people would treat her firsthand. And sometimes it would be something as simple as like watching her walk through a department store, following her. And, they would never do that to me. And I allegedly shoplifted a lot more than she did as a teenager. But, but then you have, like one day we went to the Waffle House here in town. She was dating my friend Curtis. And the guy at the desk refused to, the guy cooking that day refused to take her order because of the color of her skin. Literally just told us.
Wow. Like 1950s racism.
Right. But and this was 1992, 93. And I just couldn't believe it. He's like, he took my order, took her order, and then took my order, took Curtis's order, and then refused to take hers. And then would only take her order if Curtis gave it to her. I don't know why. Wow. I don't know why. I can't imagine that, but that's how he felt, And so, I don't know. I've been a equal rights card carrying member for 30 years now, 40 years, and that's very important to me. And I don't know. I still consider myself to be a pretty solid moderate when it comes to almost everything political and everything socially political. But at the end of the day, I'm very, open to that concept because I've seen it not really firsthand because it didn't happen to me. It happened to her, but I've seen it happen. And now that I know it sucks,
Well, treating people the way they should be treated like humans is not political. That's just what you should be doing. Like that. I think we're at a state now in society where all of a sudden having empathy for others, the ability to put yourself in others' shoes and to react accordingly has been politicized for some reason.
It's really weird to me.
It's bizarre where to try to see, okay, this group is having problems and let's see why. That all of a sudden becomes a right versus left issue versus let's just try to treat people with respect and treat them correctly.
And that's one of the things I go through a lot. And it's so, like, one of the most frustrating things for me, I don't mind somebody accusing me of something that I am. Somebody says, hey, you're fat. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty fat. You're bad at video games. Oh, I'm pretty bad at video games. You're kind of gross looking. No, I'm pretty gross looking. Any of that stuff, that didn't bother me. When somebody mislabels me, though, it really frustrates me. One of the things that I get a lot is people think I'm not true to myself, or they think that I'm trying to just say the popular thing or do the popular thing. And I don't think that way. I always speak my mind. The problem is my mind is fairly simple. As I said, I've embraced my nihilism 20 years ago. So as a result of that, I can't really get that involved in stuff, right? And so I don't lean far left. I don't lean far right. I just kind of exist in this world and just kind of enjoy it. And there's things I'll stand up for, I'm celebrating marriage equality passing in Australia today. I think that's wonderful. I think every person, if they love another person, should be able to have all of the rights that me and my wife have taken for granted over the last 4 years. You know what I'm saying? Why not? If you want to do that to yourself, or you want to celebrate your love and you want to sign that social contract, why shouldn't you be allowed to? You and I ought to get married one day. That's what I'm saying. If you want to, we should be allowed to. I think that's okay.
My sisters always say, why should only straight people be miserable?
Right, exactly. That's what exactly. I'm pretty happy with my marriage, but I don't know. I can't speak for my wife, but I enjoy it. But that's but for the most part, I'm just not that worked up about stuff. And so I can't really join in on the politicism of the day. And everything is so polarized, so politicized. And I feel like an impartial observer about 98% of the things I enjoy. Even the video games, which is something I'm very passionate about. And I'm mad at EA right now too, as we all should be, because they're ruining one of my favorite franchises. And not only that, but the publishing company has put their developers at a very bad place. But I'm not that worked up about it because I just won't play the game and it'll be okay. I'll just play something else instead. You know, it doesn't make me feel like I need to make 100 Reddit posts about it or 10,000 videos. It doesn't mean I feel like I need to make death threats to the developers. It doesn't mean like I have to make personal attacks on anybody at EA. It's like, they're a shitty developer and they screwed up a game. Oh, well.
It's everything so polarized now, though, and you see these extreme voices, whether it's people reacting to DLC in a game, for example, with your recent tweets. Is this just because social media allows the most extreme voices to be heard better than the more reasonable people?
Right. I mean, it also rewards it, right? You know,
it rewards it.
You get into these echo chambers, and there's a few echo chambers I like, you know, to be honest with you. You know, I think like the Vlog Brothers. I'm a huge fan of Hank Green, John Green, right? And they are pretty left. Maybe not into cuck territory necessarily, but pretty left.
The cuck territory,
right? As I think people might put it. But they lean pretty left in a way that I kind of admire sometimes. And you know, it's so funny. Their audience is very like-minded people. But I think it's in a fairly good way, right? And some of my conservative friends from back home, they are very like-minded as well, and they're not about hate. They're not about like taking apart the world. They're not about anything like that. They're about trying to make their healthcare cost affordable and getting back to work, and you know, having our country taxes less and spend less. And like when I hear that echo chamber, I'm like, you know, that's a good echo chamber because they're saying good things, right? And I like that. What I worry about is the echo chambers that say, you know, punch a Nazi. And here's the thing. Punch a Nazi. If someone's actually wearing the swastika, right, like punch that guy. Knock that guy down. I'm fine with that, okay? But what you define as a Nazi might be a little loose, and you might be punching people who don't deserve it. That's what I worry about. And that echo chamber can be very, very damaging, very polarizing, right? And the same thing when it comes to, you know, hating on certain religions or certain people, demographics or certain minorities or whatever. That echo chamber can be very, very dangerous, and that's the area that we're in now. And it becomes like this self-feeding flame that becomes a bonfire at some point. And then you have stuff like Charlottesville, and you have stuff like that happen because of that echo chamber and thinking you're right and thinking you're righteous and thinking you're doing the right thing. And that's why I preach moderation. And that's why I not only say have a moderate message, but encourage other people to be moderate, to avoid those bonfires before this country burns down because of it.
I just want to be able to clarify your statement about Charlottesville. Are you saying that the counter-protesters should have been moderate and not have shown up to counter-protest the white nationalists, or the white nationalists should not have shown up, everyone shouldn't have showed up?
I think that everything about Charlottesville, in my personal opinion, is shameful. Just about everything about it. There's I was not happy with the counter-protesters. I'm not happy with the protesters. I'm not happy with anything that happened there. There are probably a few people that walked in there who were like, you know what? I kind of like that statue. I like statues. Let's leave the statue. And those people, I probably don't have a problem with you, right? And I think there are maybe even a few more people who are like, well, you know what? It's an unpopular opinion, but let's defend that unpopular thing. It's still freedom of speech. It's still freedom of expression. I think I'm okay with those people. But the people who went there angry, the people carrying those Nazi flags, the people that were there to incite anger and violence, and that's on both sides of things too. You know, those are the people that really get me scratching my head. You know, I just, and then there are people who, at the end of the day, are doing some bad stuff, but don't realize what they're doing ain't great. You know,
do you see any responsibility of, like you said, there might have been people that said, "Oh, I just don't see it's right to tear down a flag of a Confederate general. I see that as the first slippery slope step towards eliminating history." Do you see there being an issue with those people once they're around people that start chanting anti-Jew statements and white national stuff? They should at least at that point say, "I'm out. This is too much."
Right. And that's the biggest thing. And I think that's a lot of people get lumped in that don't really deserve to be. We saw that with Gamergate too, right? Boy, this video is getting so demonetized, huh? But we saw that with Gamergate too. There were a lot of people that were involved in Gamergate, and they were worried about ethics in the way gaming was being reported on YouTube and on Twitch and in journalism, and they were worried about, you know, that kind of stuff. And these people weren't monsters. They were just worried about the industry. They worry about the hobby. They worry about the things they care about. But they got lumped in. We see right now again with this whole EA backlash. You've got a handful of people who are issuing personal attacks against the developers, a handful of people who are issuing death threats against these developers. And And that is the headline today. It's not that EA screwed up. It's not that EA is anti-consumer. It's not that EA has ruined one of the best franchises in entertainment history. That should be the message. But instead, EA is allowed to change the message because of these a small number of fools. And you see that in Charlottesville too. You have a small number of fools there, and that becomes the message the media runs with. And the people that are standing along bad people, and you shouldn't stand next to bad people. You should walk away from those people. When you see a swastika, you should probably just go, right? You should probably go home.
I mean,
right? But
I would say that if you feel the need to carry a tiki torch and say we will not be replaced, I don't want anything to do with that, even
right, exactly.
if theoretically,
That's exactly right.
like a Robert E. Lee statue. That's a bridge too far. I would say any reasonable person would get away from that unless they get caught up in sort of some weird frenzy.
But that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what the echo chamber does. That's what the echo chamber does. The echo chamber takes someone who's very open-minded and very progressive, and sometimes will get them to agree with doxing somebody they disagree with. That happened to me. I got doxed, not by 4chan, but by progressives. That happened to me. That's crazy that happened to me. But that happened to me. But that's what the echo chamber does. Is I don't know. It's scary. It's a scary loophole.
I think tribalism and people seeing a zero-sum game when it comes to any sort of social or political argument is what it comes down to. And unfortunately, and I've seen this with some of my friends, some liberal friends, that it's almost like the ends justify the means. As long as you're on the right side, it doesn't matter how you get to the end result, which is obviously. Right. That's awful. You have to have the moral high ground in whatever side you're trying to position yourself as. You can't excuse your own misbehavior on your side, and the same way you wouldn't excuse it on the other side. You have to hold yourself accountable. I think that's what is missing in a lot of our political discussions and sort of the whataboutism stuff, where it's like, well, the current president may have done some bad stuff. Oh, what about this other person that may have done bad stuff 25 years ago? And it's like, well, at some point, you just have to look at what's going on. All right, actually, without comparing someone else.
John Oliver just did a piece talking about the whole whataboutism stuff, and it's fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's been going on for at least a year. And this is the worst I've ever seen something like this. And it's like no one wants to be held accountable for someone sort of either a belief they have or a person in their own group they're trying to support. No one wants to have any sort of moral high ground. It doesn't matter anymore.
All right, and that's. And that's the thing, and you see it on every aspect, and that's what I try to steer people away from. That's everything my message is about. I certainly do not advocate attacking a developer. I do not advocate personally attacking that person or issuing death threats or doing anything to make that person personally uncomfortable. But I don't know why we can't have a discussion about the game itself and about the issues they made and the choices they made. And I don't know why I can't have that conversation with that developer. And I don't know, but again, it's all about deflection. It's all about polarization. It's all about politicizing. It's all about the echo chamber. It's all about, and that's the world that we have now. And I don't want to be part of it. And I will never be part of it. And I will never be part of your echo chamber. I will always show both sides of an argument. And at the end of it, I'll probably tell you how I feel. But how I feel most of the time is probably not as strongly as you. That's how it's always going to be, The
conversation can be had, of course, but I think where the waters get muddied is I saw you tweet something about where someone said, why should I be associated with the worst person in my group? And you said, well, the worst person in the group does represent you, whether you like it or not.
Right, and he knows he does. He knows he does. And
that's a philosophical debate, whether or not members, is the general Muslim community responsible for the actions of ISIS?
Right. Well, for those of you who don't know about that tweet, let me cover it as best I can, and I'll talk about that a little bit. Actually, they're definitely getting demonetized. But so what I said was, the developer over there at EA tweeted out how he'd gotten 7 death threats and like 1,600 personal attacks. He was logging them for legal reasons and so on and so forth. And
it's because of the DLC and having too many points to get Vader.
Right, which is just
Luke
like
Skywalker.
Crazy reason to be mad at a human being. It's a crazy reason to attack another person who is as valid and as important as you are. Every one of us is just like us. Every person around you is exactly like you. They have a heart and a mind and a soul. They are just as important and as valid as you are. No one is better than anyone else. Everyone should be treated exactly the same, the way you would want to be treated, and that's how the fucking world works. And anybody who doesn't get that is either 12 or kind of dumb. That's my opinion, and needs to be educated. Okay. And so that fucking said, I tweeted out and I said, this is why they don't take our reasonable requests seriously. This is why publishing companies and developers don't care about screwing us over. This is why this is why we have to do better. This is why some men and women won't date gamers. This is why, and it's this huge list of reasons. And a lot of people took offense to that. And I said, we have to do better. And what I meant by that, and I clarified it on the Kotaku in Action message board on Reddit. I said that, number one, we can never give in. As gamers, we can't give in to that kind of thing. It feels good to cyberbully. It does. I've done my share of it back in the day when I was a teenager. Or, I mean, not a teenager, but in my mid-20s. And so I know it feels good. I know it feels good to ruin somebody else's Overwatch game. I know it feels good. But you can't do it because it discredits the entire movement, right? And I think just like the Muslim community condemns extremists, I think gamers should condemn the people that do that kind of thing. I think we have a certain responsibility to speak out and say, that's not cool to do, man. You can't issue death threats. You can't issue personal attacks. Don't do that. And I think if we were very vocal about that, we change the headlines. Not because it's going to affect anything. You and I can't stop some crazy person from being a crazy person. But what we can do is change the stigma that surrounds gaming. And we can change the headlines because that's what they're going to do. Those people give all the ammo in the world to EA to change the message. They give all the ammo in the world for Kotaku to print some article defending EA, defending the developers. Don't give them that ammo. If more gamers that day said, I do not stand by the people who are saying that shit, but I still want the game to be fixed, if that message is the message that's universally given, then that's the message that gets the headlines, in my opinion. And that's the only way we can fix that.
How do you quantify that universal message? Because even if you have 20 people that sent a death threat or 10 people, wouldn't that heavy-handed of a negative message, wouldn't that still be seen as, wow, this is bullshit? If even one person still does it, wouldn't that still be the focus? Wow, one person sent me a death threat. Can you ever get to that point where you eliminate that?
Okay, so I think the timeline goes like this: controversy happens, right? So people don't like the thing, then seven crazy people, because it's only 7 people out of how many millions of people are upset about this game, but 7 people issue a death threat, and then that developer and Kotaku says death threats over a video game, and then we as a community have to then say, I condemn those 7 people. I think they're pieces of shit. They do not speak for me, but I still really want the video game to be fixed. And that we change the message because it's a series of feeding and responding, feeding, responding, feeding, responding. And when they feed us the shitty designed game that's exploitive to us, then we can respond with anger, which we did, and respond with reasonable requests to fix it, which we did. And then they fed us this line about how personal attacks and death threats. And we have to respond to that by being responsible and saying, hey, nobody here believes in that shit. All of us, 98% of our community is sane. Okay.
Doesn't it go back to the fact that the most vocal people most of the time are the negative ones? Like when you go look at a Yelp review or an Amazon review, if you're satisfied with the product, you probably won't talk about it. You will only voice your opinion if you have a very negative feeling about something or a very negative experience about a restaurant or a product. You will more likely than not talk about it. So can you really get that part of human nature out of the equation? Because I would say most of the people that get the Battlefront game won't even say anything about it ever more positive or negative online. They're just going to get the game and enjoy it.
At this point, well, number one, I'm mostly talking to the people who are very active online. I have a lot of followers and do affect a lot of people. But that said, secondly, I'm only trying to stem the tide at this point. How long have I lived with a stigma over my head because I like to press buttons on a controller? How long now? 43 years. I've played my first video game at the age of 5. Kids have been making fun of me. I got pantsed because I liked Nintendo as a kid.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It's who I've always been. It's who I'll always
There's been that negative gamer stigma for you growing up, because when I was growing up, every kid had a Nintendo. Every jock had a Nintendo. Every kid that played sports. I go over to my friend Joey's house. We play street hockey. Then we play NES right afterwards. Or I guess it depended upon where you grew up. But I never had that negative gamer stigma, or at least where I was.
I've had second and third dates with women that they got past my lack of teeth. They got past my morbid obesity. They got past my being broke as shit. They got past my shitty wardrobe and my broken down car. But when I told them I played video games a lot, That was the deal breaker.
Well,
I've had
that
happen.
That might have been it. When you say a lot, that could have a connotation of, wow, is this all this guy's doing on the weekends is playing video games for 12 hours a day?
Well,
that might have been it.
I'm out with you, bitch, so no. But, it's Friday night and I'm here. Now, don't get me wrong. I would like to play some World of Warcraft later tonight, but I'm going to wait till I get home. Unless you're coming home with me, and then we'll play some multiplayer or something.
Not to go off on a tangent, but in my dating experience, I would keep the gaming stuff usually till like the third date or fourth. You got to sort of weave it in and let them know that, hey, I'm not some sort of freak.
Right, yeah.
And then you sort of, I think the only time where I could tell it was definitely bad was on I think it was a second date, and the girl came back to my place, and she saw my wall of NES games. And now we're just talking video games. We're talking a visual. Because nowadays you can say, oh, I love video games, and you'll never see them physically because they're on Steam on your computer. You know, they're out of sight. But when you have a wall of old gray cartridges that are 25 years old, that's a little weird. And she even said, whoa, this is like 40-year-old virgin stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to have a third date now. That was it. That was it.
I keep thinking about that if I ever have to date again. Do I hide my amiibo collection, or do I leave it prominently displayed in the living room where it is right now? And you know what? Fuck them. If they're not in my amiibo collection, they're not into me, so they can walk out the door, right?
But in the past, I'd say 8 to 9 years, geek culture has become accepted and sort of celebrated. Wait, I mean, look at the biggest TV shows like The Walking Dead is zombie stuff. That was considered nerd shit like 20 years ago.
I know, yeah, exactly.
Zombies. And now it's like, oh, you like that? And now all the superhero movies that are the biggest movies. So geek stuff is now acceptable. It's like all the closet
Except
geeks
you forget,
are nerds.
if I ever date again, I'm not going to be dating any millennials. They're not going to go out with a 43-year-old man, okay? I'm going to be dating women my age, and they're still just as fucking angry about it as they've ever been. Oh, you play video games? Yeah, come on, it's an Xbox. Get over it, you know?
I would give women more credit than that. I think there's a lot of people that grew up with Nintendo or Super Nintendo that'd be like, oh, I used to love those games. I can see why I used to love them today.
I really hope so. I really hope so.
I really think that the stigma has largely, you can never say 100% because there's so many different people. But I would say the stigma has been largely erased.
But I will tell you that the people who write at Polygon, and I love Polygon, by the way. If you guys are listening, I listen to your I watch Monster Factory every week. It's a great every time you upload. I love the guys over there, and the guys over at Kotaku, Steven Totillo, you're not doing that bad of a job, honestly, and some of your writers are pretty okay guys, you know. But that said, if they get their way, it will be pantsed in the locker room just as often as we can be in the future, and they paint a very negative picture of us and show us at our worst instead of at our best, and it really sucks. You know, PewDiePie, God love you, Felix. You know, he's made some huge mistakes, but that's what makes the headlines when he makes those huge mistakes. You know what doesn't make the headlines? The $5+ million he's raised for charity in the years. That doesn't make the headlines. The number of people of lives he's not just entertained but saved. He, just like me, gets just as many letters. You know, when I was growing up, and I was polarized, and I didn't feel this and I feel that, and anybody who does YouTube gets it, right? And if he has 38 million subscribers and I have 4 million, how many more times is he getting it? And that guy talks about some dark shit too, man. He really does. And I'm proud of him when he gets away from the gaming stuff and he talks about some of the hardest parts of his life and talks about the hardest parts of just being alive today. And I mean, he's a good guy for the most part. He's dumb as a rock when it comes to saying and doing the wrong things, man. But I you know, and I can celebrate because I was raised by a monster who did a bunch of good things but was a bad person. I can celebrate someone like Felix easily, because yes, Felix has done a lot of damage, you know, and directly affected me with some of the damage he's done, you know. That said, I celebrate his good instead, and I wish we had more people like that at Polygon, at Kotaku, at, you know, Big Mom. You know, those people need to be, you know.
Well, when we talk about any sort of celebrity, whether it's online or sports figures or movie, you always, what's sexy is the downfall and the bad behavior, because you always think that, well, the good behavior is almost expected.
Right.
It's part of the, to me at least, part of using your platform and being popular, you should use your platform for good. So at least for me, not that you shouldn't celebrate people doing charitable works. I mean, I just did a charity event 2 days ago, but
thank you, by the way.
That's it. Oh, well, thank you.
That's awesome, man.
You're welcome. But to me, that's almost part of the job. That's to me the giving back part where, yeah, you're getting, you know, you're wildly successful from this popularity. to me, it's almost an obligation that you should give something back.
I agree.
To me, it shouldn't necessarily be celebrated or overtly thanked for it. But
how
beyond
many,
that, though.
But how many YouTubers don't do that? And that's the thing.
But that's another conversation. I see your point, though.
But that's the thing. Felix had no incentive and no reason to have to do it or anything like that, man. He does it because he actually gives a crap, you know? And like, it's so funny. A lot of YouTubers I know never, you know, and I know a lot, man. I go to VidCon every year and I try to get an hour with some of my favorite people. And sometimes those hours turn into days with those people. And the number of people that are just genuinely good and don't talk about the good they do, you would not be surprised. I've always felt that way. I never talk about the money we give to charity. I very rarely do public charity drives because I just take the money people have donated to my Twitch stream and just hand it over. And we give away tens of thousands of dollars to charity every year because it's what you do. It's what you're supposed to do. Even when you're fortunate as I am. That said, a lot of YouTubers never even try to go for the glory, you know? But at the end of the day, I wish that stuff was celebrated more, and I wish that gamers were celebrated more. And when Mark and Jack and the best of us do wonderful things, Markiplier and Jacksepticeye, when they do wonderful things like that, that's what I wish was getting the front page of Kotaku.
Well, why is there such a need to be thrown into a group just based upon your hobby? Like, I want to hear you say us as gamers.
I don't think there's any reason to do it. I think it's stupid to do it, but that doesn't keep people like Stephen Totillo and his cronies doing it. That's what they do. That's what they do. And that's how the world has always done it. It's all about black and white. It's all about labels. It's all about grouping up people. It's all about tribalism. And that's what our podcast has been about today. And that's how a lot of these people think. And more importantly, it's how a lot of the readers think. And so, you know, when CNN has an article, you know, say vilifying Reddit, you know, and they talk about all the terrible stuff that Reddit has on it, they forget that there's millions of us sharing pictures of cats on the front page of Reddit. But all of a sudden, it's those filthy Redditors. How many people use Reddit a day and don't identify themselves as a Reddit? How many people play video games and don't identify themselves as gamers, right? But it doesn't matter because they're going to lump you in. It doesn't matter if you lump yourself in, they do it.
What is the fear? So is the fear that in the public eye, it gets swirled up and thrown about that gamers are socially awkward and have the stigma of being bad people and doxing people? Is that the fear then, that would become acceptable?
My fear, at the end of the day, I think the thing I worry about the most, and I take this responsibility very seriously, and I wish other people did too. I think that any label that can be applied to me, whatever that label is, cis, white, male, atheist, nihilist, morbidly obese, older, Gen X, whatever label somebody can apply to me, gamer, whatever label it is, whenever I act, especially in a social media way, I am acting in a way that they will use against that group if they don't like that group, right? And so I try to act very, very responsibly with everything I do in my personal life as well as online. And my biggest, and the reason I do that is because I am terrified of the damage I will do to other people by not doing good enough of a job. And that's what I encourage other people to consider. And that's what I encourage other people to do. And it's not just about being a video gamer, and it's not just about being white or anything else, or being a conservative or being progressive or being anything else. It all comes down to the fact that I don't want to give people ammo. I want to disarm them instead. That's what I want to do.
And I think that's a great point when it comes to social interaction, representing true positive things that have to be done, or some sort of social message or movement. But it's hard for me to wrap my head around why I should care what Polygon thinks about gamers.
And you may not, and that's okay. And that's fine. And there's plenty of people that feel that way. And, there's going to be people who actively want the damage to be done. A lot of those people that issue death threats, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing with those personal attacks. They want to seed chaos. They want to watch the world burn, right? And so I feel like I'm responsible for the people who are actively acting against our best interest and actively acting against, or the people who don't care. And it's okay not to care. That's fine.
What I'm saying is this though: why should a specific, say Polygon, like Polygon got all that flack about like gamers are dead during the Gamergate, right?
Right.
What would have happened? Wouldn't it have been better if everyone just ignored that article, didn't have the massive backlash? If they just let it just be extinguished in its own little vacuum, not giving it air to breathe, wouldn't it just have come and gone and nothing would have mattered at the time?
Yes and no. So, and this is something I really consider a lot, but I guess probably people are probably like, oh, it's so SJW roots are really showing right now. And I guess maybe they are, but I keep thinking about, it did have the Streisand effect. And the more gamers complained about it, the more people knew about that article, right?
Sure.
And
doesn't the backlash validate the reason for the article to exist?
Oh, and there's some truth to that too. But at the same time, if people don't speak out against that, hopefully in a positive way, the people who spoke out in a negative way, Leigh Alexander, I believe, is the woman who wrote that article, personally attacking her as a person, issuing death threats. The people who act in that form actually do a very, very bad job of representing us, right? I do think that a lot of people, and I can think of several YouTubers off the top of my head who made a video about that and said, look, gamers aren't dead. There's nothing wrong with being a gamer. There's nothing wrong with identifying with your hobby. Gaming is fun. It's an okay hobby. This woman is wrong. Hardcore gamers are always going to exist. We spend the most money. It's just cool that we do that. They should cater to us. There's no reason not to. I think the people who answered it in a very level-headed way kept damage from being done. And if they don't do that, what if the industry thinks, you're right, everything will be Candy Crush. Let's put loot boxes in everything. Oh, wait, they did that anyway. But still, I feel like if you can speak up in a responsible way, you should. And if you have to speak up, if you don't care, you don't have to care. That's okay too. I don't care about most things. But if you're the kind of person who wants to do evil shit, please don't. Please don't, because you represent me and I hate it when you do that.
I think there's, to me, just the inherent, Gamergate was a great example, at least, of crystallizing the pros and cons, you look at it, of associating with a group that's so nebulous and so vague that it can represent anything.
Exactly.
So at that point, when you're saying I'm part of a gamer group, what exactly are you saying? And in and of itself, the whole Gamergate message and hashtag, to me, is like, once something becomes a hashtag, what the hell does that even mean at that point?
Yeah.
What does a hashtag mean? And who's the one that defines what that means and what that message is? Who's the representative? Who keeps it coherent? Who keeps it cogent? Who's the one that decides when it's going off the rails? So that's where I come back to the fact that it's not that it's much ado about nothing, but you go from this whole argument of, which is a good one, of we should have ethical standards in journalistic practice when it comes to video games. Absolutely. It'd be hard pressed to find even gaming journalists working for Kotaku. I think that would be against that. But when you turn that into a hashtag movement, then it becomes anything else you want it to, and then you can have people jumping in from left and right.
Exactly.
So when you have a movement that gets associated with any hashtag or any phrase, I think that's always dangerous, and that's just my opinion on it, because then it's hard to pinpoint exactly what your end goal is and how you quantify.
Well, the worst part about it is
steps to it.
The worst part about it, again, you're doing their job for you. You're labeling yourself, and you're allowing them to assign negative qualities to whatever. And so again, I go back to I almost mentioned him by name, and I'm not going to mention him by name because we've made amends, but we have that one reporter who told me, one day we're going to have to write about Gamergate, and when we do, we're going to make sure that you're listed as one of the leaders because of your tacit support of that movement or whatever. And, I never supported the movement. I supported some of the ideas of the movement, but I never considered myself whatever that is, But I like some of the ideas, and I don't like some of the other ideas. Same with progressiveness. I like some of your ideas, and I dislike some of the others. And same with conservatism. I like some of your ideas, and I don't like some of the others. And that's pretty much, I take the best from anything and throw away the rest. And that's how I think you should become. That's how you become a person, right? And you don't have to blindly support Roy Moore just because you're conservative. You don't have to. Just because you're Republican, you don't have to support Roy Moore just because he has an R next to his name too. You can dislike parts of your party. You can dislike parts of your hobby. You can dislike parts of whatever it is that you're surrounded by. And I don't know why people don't choose to do that. Everyone is an individual, but you're so quick to tribalize. And when I call myself a gamer, the only thing I mean is I like to play video games as a hobby. That's all that word means to me. I don't know what else it's supposed to even mean. And when I talk about other gamers, I talk about other people who buy video games and play them. And that's all I'm really thinking. But that means so much more to CNN. That means so much more to Kotaku. That means so much more to Fox News, and I hate it.
Well, it's easy to categorize people. Like you said, humans by nature are tribalistic. Most primate species are. We band together in the groups, and that's how we distinguish one from each other. And it's hard to get over that. And I think it's more difficult at times it's actually a lot more work to think about individual issues or individual points versus attaching yourself to an entire plank of beliefs that, okay, if you believe A, you also believe B through Z automatically. And that's a lot easier to wrap your mind around. At least I think this is what I think philosophically. A lot of people just say, okay, I'm going to take that piece. That's what I am. Versus saying, oh, no, I like A, B, and C, but I hate F, G, H. I's a little weird. That, I think, is harder for humans by nature. Complexity and nuance, I think, is lost to a lot of people.
Right.
Because, again, it requires thinking.
And again, I quote George Carlin here. He says, think of someone you know who's of average intelligence, right? Think of somebody you know who's just pretty much is about as smart as your average person. Now realize half the population is dumber than that guy. And it's like, when you think about that, I guess that's probably true, but I don't really, even some of the least intelligent people I know tend to be very good people, and they can be critical, and they're capable of critical thinking. I think anybody is. I think anybody, even with the lowest intelligence, can be taught critical thinking. It's just we teach the opposite. The very first day you sat down in school, they teach you to think like everybody else, right? Sure. They teach you to go along with the crowd, and it's frustrating. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I'm just saying I'm different in that way. I never really understood what they were trying to get me to do, and I never really cared for it. And since my situation was different, I thought a little different than other people, and that's fine.
Yeah, I always come back to behavior versus belief system, and the two, in theory, have little to do with each other. So you could be a great person to your neighbors and everyone in your family and everyone you get into contact with, and still have horrible personal beliefs.
Right.
Like you can be, in theory, someone could be the worst racist, could hate gay people, but if they treat everyone around them like with respect, you would never know that potentially.
Right, exactly.
So then it comes back to, okay, what are you really looking at when you're looking at humans? Is it more important how they're behaving and treating each other, or what they deep down believe? And for some people they intersect, but for a lot of people it may not.
And so that's one of the most interesting aspects between the current generation and the generation I grew up with, right? So back in my day, it was all about tolerance. That was the word of the day. Tolerance, right? And so let's imagine you are a nuclear family, and you're the father of that family, and you live in an all-white neighborhood, and you have a cousin who's gay, all right? And you don't have to agree with your cousin's lifestyle, but you have to accept it. You have to treat him with respect. You have to tolerate him, right? And so a black family moves into your neighborhood. You know what? You don't have to be okay with that. You don't have to like it. That's okay. You can have all the misconceptions you want in the world, but you have to tolerate them. You have to treat them like your neighbor, because they're your neighbor now, okay? You have to tolerate them. And that's true of the Muslims down the road and the synagogue down the road, and it's true of everybody else around you. But the flip side of that coin was everyone tolerated bigots too. The flip side of that coin was, it's okay that you're stupid. It's okay that you're wrong. It's okay. We're going to treat you neighborly. We're going to treat, as long as you don't act on it, as long as you're tolerant of us, we'll be tolerant of you. That's the deal. And so that was a really good system, and it worked for us growing up. It really did. And when someone turned out to be intolerant, they were ostracized. And when they turned out to be tolerant, but no matter what belief structure they had, we're cool with you. That's all right. Old Mr. Fender, he's a dumbass. But he still checks out the black people coming to the store just like anybody else, and he should, and that's how it should be. He doesn't say anything rude to him. He says hello when they walk to the door and says goodbye when they leave. He's a good guy, right? And he may very well go home and burn a cross on his coffee table. That's fine, as long as he's treating everybody with tolerance. These days, if we even believe that Mr. Fender could possibly have 1 second of wrong think, we have to destroy him. We have to brutalize him. And I don't know how the world is supposed to work like that. I'd rather tolerate Mr. Fender and maybe help educate that guy, and maybe help him find the error of his ways, right? I'd rather do that. I wouldn't destroy the guy. I don't think anything comes of destroying somebody else. Educating, teaching, empathizing, sympathizing, those are the keys. That's the way it's done. That's how my generation did it. And maybe it's not how your generation is going to do it, and that's fine. Or, I mean, the generation of the people listening right now. I know you're a little older too.
But I think what's happening now, though, is I think in theory what you're saying is, say you live in a neighborhood and half the one block hates the people across the street. They literally hate each other. But as long as they're nice and pleasant in person and aren't throwing things at each other, you're saying that's okay. I think what's happening in the current political environment is people are seeing a potential really weird slippery slope where all of a sudden people are coming out from, like, oh, privately they're a racist, and okay, in their house there isn't. Now they're feeling, oh, now it's okay for me to step out and profess that to the rest of the world.
Right.
And that's where people are like, oh, okay, this is weird now because we haven't seen this in a while.
Right.
And that's where people are getting freaked out.
But I think part of that comes from, I have a friend who in the last 2 or 3 years has gone like deep off the end. And he happened to go off the conservative end. And 5 or 6 years ago, I had a friend who went deep off the left end, right? And one thing that they have in common, I think it's a product of the time. And what's really weird about it is I don't think they would have ever been that person until it became acceptable to do that. And I think one of the things that made it so acceptable is I've always believed social change has to be a slow process, right? I use the analogy boiling the frog. And so if you ever heard the phrase that if you throw a frog in a boiling pot, he'll hop out, but if you put him in a cold pot of water and then slowly warm it up, you can boil him to death and he will never know. I kind of feel like that's how you have to treat social change. And so for a really long time, they're starting with the Clinton administration and moving right to the end of the Obama administration. And I say we, I mean progressives. Progressives really bit out a big chunk, right? The difference between 1992 and 2016 is a big difference socially. And the way that we were treating people of color, the way we were treating people who are transgender, the way we were treating people who are homosexual. We got marriage equality in that period of time. We went from not even it being a pipe dream of hope and a puff of smoke of hope to it being a reality. But the problem is that was not boiling the frog. That was asking for a lot really quick. And so you got a lot of people who are terrified of how quickly things are changing, and they fight. And they fight back, But
isn't that sort of, if you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of history, and you can't cater to the people that are behind the times. I mean, for example, would the Civil Rights Act have happened if there wasn't that social upheaval and forcing it to get to that point quickly in the 60s?
Right, but then again, what you have, and people forget how bad the 80s were, and the 80s sucked for a lot of people. But you have to remember here in America, especially, the pendulum swings, and we have a two-party system, and it swings left and it swings right and it swings left and it swings right. And you have the 60s, but then you have the 80s, and then you have the aughts, and now you've got this. And now the pendulum has swung very far right, and it's very active in that way, and that's fine. But the problem is, the further the pendulum swings, the more damage gets done.
When you say the pendulum swing, you mean the balance of power in government has swung? Because
that's part of it, but also the political climate and the social climate changes with it.
I say the social and political climate exactly where it is. It's just that people now are voicing what they always held inside them, and now they feel more comfortable professing it. That's
but I think we would not. I think if we didn't make so much progress so quickly, I think that people wouldn't have been as afraid or so volatile. So if we didn't have an African American president, for example, that might have upset people. That brought out the worst in a lot of people. It really did, and that's great. Don't get me wrong.
But you're not saying it's acceptable. You're saying that's a necessary evil, and it's almost expected that this happens.
Yeah,
there's a backlash,
and it's very shameful, and it's awful, and it sucks.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
And I'll tell you the other thing that I'm trying to say here is that, like, I understand why we have to do that, because let's say you are a young homosexual boy, right? And you are growing up at the time I grew up in the 80s, and you want to be able to be openly gay, and you want to be able to maybe marry someone you love one day. And so you don't want to plant a tree for the next generation. You want your life to change, right? And so you want it to be fixed now. I want my life to change. I don't want to make the world a better place for my kids or my kids' kids. I want to make the world better for me. And so it's understandable why that happens. But that said, that's the backlash. And so if you get that progress, sometimes you got to live through the backlash, right?
Sure. I guess it comes down to, well, you have to force history. I mean, look at this. We literally had a civil war.
You know, and depending on how you feel, you know, whether you're conservative or progressive here, you know, obviously the Trump administration is the pendulum swinging very, very far right. And so the either good side or bad side of that, depending on how you feel, is that when it swings back, it'll swing very, very far left. And I'm curious as to how that'll look.
It's not a surefire bet that it'll swing back to the extreme.
It has so far for about 240 years. So we'll see.
No, it's gone Democrat to Republican, but the political parties, Democrat and Republican, used to be center left and center right, very close together. Yeah,
that's true.
And now they've grown apart. And the majority of people do identify somewhere in the middle. And
I will say, this is all theory crafting to me. I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree in political science. I don't know any more than anyone listening to this. I don't know any more than you, Pat. And probably speaking, you probably all know more than me. That said, this is just me applying my morality to the world that surrounds me and trying to, you know, understand it and make sense of it and what I think is right. But it doesn't matter, because one day I will die and you will all forget my name, and then you guys will all die, and the planet we live on will fall into the sun, and nothing matters, and it does who gives a shit. So,
Stephen, my dear boy, you're going to be on YouTube forever. You're going to be seen 10,000 years from now, which is both consoling and kind of depressing when I think about it. People might be watching me in my bad mirror behind me.
Oh no!
Is that why though that you think people have an attachment to you because they see that these are truly your beliefs? This is who you are when you're appearing in your videos. This is not a facade. This is not an act. I'm not like some Disney bro out there appealing to the teeny boppers. I'm actually here saying something that, at least to me, has weight. Is that why you feel there's a connection there with your audience?
I think a lot of it is, and I think a lot of it is, especially when I talk to like Markiplier, right? Markiplier, I didn't know this, but he was a fan of mine before he even got started. And two VidCons ago, he told me something that I'll never forget. But I told him, I said, Mark, thanks for your relentless positivity, especially all the things you've gone through. He had just lost one of his friends, like one of his YouTube community members. And he's like, you know, the reason I do that, Boogie, is because I've been watching you for a long time, and your relentless positivity, not just on YouTube, but through your life, is what makes me want to be positive for other people. And that really hit me, you know, and I don't know, that's amazing, but how Mark affects people in that same way and how I try to affect people, I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that I try to be a completely open book. A lot of people on YouTube try to put the best of themselves up here, and I don't put the worst of me up here, but I do put as much of me as I can, right? You know, as much as me, other than me taking a shower, or maybe the arguments I have with my friends or family or wife or something like that, or, you know, the severest debilitating anxiety, stuff like that, that's never gone up. But I'm not afraid to talk about the problems I have or the issues I face. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I don't think enough people do that. I think if you have a voice like I have, or like Mark does, I think it is so important to talk about the stuff that he talks about. And even Felix does it from time to time. And like Ethan from H3H3, I'm a huge fan of his, because if you listen to his podcast, he will frequently talk about the personal issues he faces and he faces, and he talks about his Tourette's and stuff like that. And when you talk about that stuff, you really can help people. Even just letting them know that they're not alone in the world, or letting them know the challenges you face makes maybe sometimes the challenges they face a little easier, to know that they're not alone facing it, or maybe to know that you overcame the thing that you've overcome. It can make them feel better about overcoming the thing they're doing. So I think the fact that I've been open about it is why I've retained some of the audiences that I've retained, even if they disagree with me politically, and about half my audience does. And even if they disagree with my opinions about video games half the time, I think they're connected to me as a person because they get to know me as a person. And I think that's what YouTube is about. That's what separates YouTube from TV. You know, it's that personal,
right now, right?
Right? It's supposed to be the you in YouTube, and that's what I've always tried to do. You know?
Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Or would you be happy doing what you're doing right now?
I'd love to either be Twitch streaming still, or I'd love to be doing YouTube still, or whatever the new service is, whatever it is. I'd like to have a footing on it. If this bubble finally does burst, and it's on a decline, it's been on a steady decline for the last 4 years or whatever, but I still do great, you know. But if it ever gets to a point that I'm not doing great anymore, I'd love to consult. I would love to move out to LA and work with a company there and directly help in somewhere, either somewhere on an MCN if I had to. I hate MCNs, but I might, you know, if I know that I could actually fight for the people that are under us and do good things for them, maybe I would try to do that. But I don't know.
Isn't the news that MCNs are slowly dying out though too?
Yeah, for the most part, it's hard for them to make money. And again, if they had ever done what they were supposed to do, you know, it's so funny that YouTube had to work directly. But MCNs were originally designed to manage partners, keep them advertiser friendly, and sell ads directly to people like Walmart and stuff. So they don't have to worry about the Google auction stuff, right? Sure. And so, you know, we guarantee that everybody in our network is safe. So advertise with us, advertise with our particular, you know, and when they do that job, they are excellent. They are excellent. And when they don't do that, and that YouTuber's stuck on relying on the YouTube auctions, that's when they're just leeching 20% off of you, 10% off of you, and that sucks.
Yeah, I think it's surprising that, I mean, first of all, the Adpocalypse, you spoke about it, that, you know, there has been a decline, and a lot of people have seen that, and it's not shocking. It wasn't shocking to me.
No.
Well, it was shocking that Google had no real response to it, and that they weren't expecting it to happen.
Right.
I think that was the most shocking thing. It's like, yeah, the salad days were going to end at some point.
Right.
With advertisers then realizing what their ads were being shown.
And again, the thing that I think bothers us most is how knee-jerk the reaction is. They responded far too critically. Like it's gone way too far in the
well, that was a pendulum, right? So that went from no, we're not looking at any videos versus what ads are being shown, and now it's like, okay, we got to hedge our bets to appease the advertiser. Now we're hurting the creators, and now it's sort of working itself out slowly. Machine learning and manual overrides of demonetization, so it's getting there. But again, they weren't prepared for it, and that's what you're sort of surprised that a gigantic company like Alphabet / Google was not prepared for. And that's why I always come back to when it's that. But then again, there's big companies that make dumb decisions all the time that are unprepared. You know,
yep,
what happened with Equifax.
Exactly.
They're supposed to...
Boy, I do watch John Oliver from time to time. Don't always agree with everything he has to say, but man, with his bit on Equifax and just the sheer incompetency, man, wow. Just completely
company is supposed to help you protect your identity and help you out with it. Now they gave it all away.
Well, you know, they were actually selling stuff like your financial like records to debt collectors. It's insane. It's insane what that. Yeah, that company. Oh, geez, it's funny. We all get mad at EA, but at the end of the day, what EA does is they just ruin a video game, right?
I know.
It's so funny because everybody talks about how they lost, how they won worst company of the year 2 years in a row, but you know, Bank of America was also up against them. And here's the thing about Bank of America: they ruined people's lives with that mortgage crisis, right? They destroyed people's lives, put them in the homeless shelters and shit. And like, but oh no, EA ruins video games, so we're gonna.
But yeah,
way worse.
It's who's actually going online and leaving? Who's actually voting on that? Who's going online and yelling on Twitter? Right. Who's going online and yelling and death threats just because their DLC is harder to get in a video game? I mean, that's what it comes down to. I think you have fringe people that will always exist. And yes, unfortunately, that gets twisted and abused by the people that will use that to their purpose versus realizing that, hey, 99% of people aren't going to leave a death threat over a video game because we're not insane.
Yep, exactly. And again, that's why I hate being lumped in. I hate that, you know, millions of good people get lumped in with 7 douchebags, but we do. And we have to think like that, and we have to realize that that's what those people do. You know?
So let's take the internet away from those 7 douchebags. By the way, you enjoying that the NES Guidebook? You enjoying that?
I did. It's literally on my coffee table. Well, I don't have a coffee table, but it's literally right there in the front room, and people flip through it every time. It is a gorgeous book, man. Thanks for giving me these two at Retropalooza. It is very well done. It is very well done. I may or may not have recently gotten a collection of games that I've been playing through, and so I've been flipping through the book to look for stuff to play. Okay. Yeah. I won't say how I got that collection of games. So it might.
I'll have to do a brand deal with you at some point.
Might be. Oh, nice. There you go. Right. But yeah, my wife, not a big heavy gamer and never owned an NES. She was a Genesis kid.
Okay.
Or she was a Sega kid. But her remark in the book was, "Wow, it's heavy." So you're getting your money's worth when you buy.
People aren't expecting it, and that was honestly when I created the book. Not to make this about the book, but that was not a precursor to preventing something like the Adpocalypse from hurting me financially. But
Right.
I always realized that if it does end, you have to diversify not just your creativity, but also, I guess, your income. And that was something that I thought that was a no-brainer. Not that no-brainer it would do as well as it has, but I have to try something else, do some writing, do some other work, produce something.
It's a gorgeous product. That's why it's doing well. It's incredible, man.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I sacrificed my YouTube career. I mean, it comes with anything else. It's time constraints. I sacrificed my YouTube career growing my channel. And people are like, Pat, where did you go? Because I didn't tell my audience that I was working on the book for like 2.5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't let them know until like the couple months before the Kickstarter hit that it was coming.
Right.
So it's like anything else. It's like, well, do you find yourself as a YouTuber because you're on YouTube once a month or once a week or twice a week, or is that your main income? You know, it's one of those things. I decided I have to diversify and do other things. And now maybe that's where I want to talk about with guests about YouTube middle age and where you go next. And I think a lot of us, at least people like in my age, mid to late 30s, that have been on YouTube for 10 years, are starting to diversify and get outside of YouTube. People like Andre Meadows from Black Nerd Comedy. Like, he's on YouTube. He's a big YouTuber, but you'll see him working outside of YouTube, doing jobs that have nothing to do with YouTube. And he shows up on the red carpet for Justice League. You know, like, he's getting himself out there. And I think that's a progression that's happening with some of us.
Right. And
not just by necessity, but doors are opening up. People are coming to YouTubers now and say, well, you have some expertise, whether it's in marketing or content creation. How do you help us outside of YouTube get to where we want to be? And that's, I think, going to develop more in the next few years.
Right, and that's something that I'm really interested in now that I'm getting this weight off of me. Like I said, I'd love to end out at LA at some point and doing stuff that's not just creating videos and streaming on Twitch. And, you know, my way of diversifying, because I was stuck in this house being so big and stuck in Arkansas, I was really focusing on like Twitch, and making sure I was big on every social media platform as I can, you know, 500,000 followers on Twitter, stuff like that, to make sure there was always a way to reach my audience and always a way to have a message. I mean, always a way to hopefully earn an income that way. And, you know, then fortunately I got to a point where I was making enough from YouTube to put money into savings. And so some of that savings is now invested, which is nice. Certainly not enough to retire on or anything close, but hopefully one day. But that said, maybe I'll use that money to make it out in LA and do exactly that, because that's what I want to do. Well, you know, in this new body, as I'm building this new body, that's what I want to do.
By the way, you look fantastic.
Thanks,
I know
man.
When I saw you in Arlington, we had a decent conversation about weight loss, and I wasn't in the shape you were in, but I did lose a lot of weight in college.
Proud of you, man.
Thank you. I think what I love to have, I mean, I've tried to have much empathy as I can for people with any sort of substance abuse problems or addiction, but I tend to have more for people going through weight loss just because I went through it myself. But also, I try to remind people that may not have the same empathy that I have towards it, is that unlike drug addiction or alcohol abuse or gambling addiction, or you have to eat.
Yeah, it's one of the toughest ones.
It's hard to struggle with an addiction or a disorder where you have to actually do it to survive and to retrain and rethink about what I'm putting in my body. And it's also a body chemistry issue at the same time. Like, your body's chemistry will change as your metabolism changes, and even how your brain is hardwired to think about how much you should actually be eating. Yeah, right. And those things that are actually changing. You've probably seen it yourself. You're probably shocked by how much less you eat now versus a year ago.
It's funny because a couple of times my roommate is like, "Hey, do you want me to pick you up food from one of our favorite restaurants?" And I'm like, "Yeah, give me the grilled chicken from Some Chickens or whatever." And you know, I can't eat fried food anymore. It makes me very sick, but I'll get the grilled stuff. And I normally would come with like fries or whatever, come with toast, and then it would come like 5 pieces of chicken or whatever, and and that would be deep fried and stuff. And so like I let him keep my fries, but I'll keep my toast and I'll keep my 5 pieces of chicken, and that's 2 meals for me now. And it's pretty great. And the other day I went and got fajitas at one of my favorite Mexican restaurants. My nutritionist recommended it. They're like, stay away from the refried beans, stay away from the guac and the sour cream. But if you're eating the meat and the vegetables, that's great. Try to get a lower carb tortilla, or maybe not use the tortillas at all. And I'm like, okay, so I got my favorite shrimp fajitas from my favorite Mexican restaurant as a little treat. and I got 3 meals out of it. And I used to get the double fajitas when I was there. I get the $22 for 2 people, and I would get that, and I would eat 90% of it, and then take maybe 10% home. At this one, I got it to go, and it was in the fridge, and I got 3 separate meals out of it. And I'm just like, holy crap! It's amazing.
You don't realize it till you feel full by a smaller amount of food. I remember with me when I started losing weight. I started to run. Sophomore year of college, after my knee was still messed up from the surgery, the car was all messed up, so it was tough. But I started to do it, and I started giving up just sweet drinks. I gave up sodas. I gave up fruit punch and lemonade, and that was a big. And I always tell people that's the first thing you should do because that's the easiest. Just stop drinking sugar drinks.
Yep, exactly.
You'll automatically lose weight.
I've been doing that almost a year, by the way. For the record, this Damien got me this from 2 Retropaloozas ago, and I've only ever drank water out of it because it keeps ice out of it. If you ever see this on my stream or you ever see this on my YouTube videos, it's always filled with ice water, and I've been drinking primarily ice water for the better part of a year, and that alone kept me from gaining weight. I finally stopped gaining weight.
Like Crystal Geyser flavored mineral water, whatever. There's so many options. But the point was, I remember this specifically. I'll never forget this. At a barbecue where I would normally eat like 2 burgers, 2 hot dogs, and like a bunch of sides. I remember struggling to finish my 1 hot dog and 1 burger. So I was struggling to finish half of what I would normally eat. And I was like, what the hell? Like that, it just sort of hit me like, oh my God, I've been eating double the amount of food I actually needed my entire life.
Right. And I'll tell you
what, it sort of hit it.
I'll tell you one of the craziest parts about it is, so my nutritionist, again, I just met with her, and she wrote down all my macros and stuff, and I'm still supposed to get like 102 grams of protein a day, and under 100 carbs a day, but again, with me eating as much protein as possible, because they don't want me to lose, when I'm losing weight here, they don't want me to lose lean mass, they want me to lose only fat, and you got to keep your protein up if you want to do that. But she has me eating between 1,000 to 2,000 calories a day. And that is pretty reasonable, except the problem is getting in 2,000 calories a day would be really tough. So that's good. I've only gone over 2,000 calories once, and it was a long day in which I didn't sleep for 24 hours, so I had 4 meals. Sure. But that said, normally eating about 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day right now. And I'm not losing weight the way it mathematically should work. The scale does not work the way it's supposed to work. Now, what's fascinating about that is my waistline continues to shrink even when the scale doesn't move. My clothes continue to fall off of me even when the scale doesn't continue to move, and it's weird. But I'll
tell you probably why though.
Why?
Because your muscle mass is slowly increasing.
Right, and that's part of it too. And we actually did a test to see how much muscle weight I had lost versus fat, and I've lost more fat than muscle loss, which is good. That said, because your body attacks your muscle first. It wants to get rid of the muscle first because the muscle affects your BMR, and it knows that. But the other problem I'm facing right now is I'm losing weight slower than I wished I was, and my surgeon is not upset about that. He said 5 to 10 pounds a month, that's what you're losing. You lost 20 pounds a month, Boogie, and I feel like I should be losing it faster than I am, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that my hormones are ruined. My body does not produce testosterone. I have to inject testosterone once a week.
Interesting.
Right. And my doctor believes I have a pituitary gland tumor, but we've never been able to get me into an MRI machine to find out if it's there. But he treats me as if it is there. And he's like, if it's there, it's been there your whole life. So we know it's benign. So we're not in any hurry. But that's probably why your system is so out of whack and why you got so big to begin with. And a lot of people are like, in order for him to gain weight at his size, he'd have to eat 4,500, 5,000 calories a day. But I've been tracking calories for a long time. And yes, I was still eating 3,000, 3,500 calories a day, sometimes as little as 2,000. But my body still would not. It just does not do what it's supposed to do. A lot of that has to do with how horribly inactive I've been because of injuries and stuff. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm just hormonally out of whack. Who knows exactly what it is? Doesn't matter. Again, these are reasons that it's slow. It's not an excuse. It will not keep me from doing what needs to get done.
At the end of the day, it's calories in, calories out.
Right.
Though. So, I mean, you start exercising, you burn calories, you're going to burn calories no matter what.
Exactly. And so I wish that it was exactly the mathematical formula that we've all been taught. But the very first thing they tell you when you will sign up for this program is every person's different. That is a hard and fast rule. It's like, when you get a history degree, when you sign up for your history bachelor's class, the very first thing they tell you in history college is everything we've taught you so far has been a lie. Everything we taught you in high school is a lie. Now we're going to teach you the truth. And then when you sign up for the master's degree for history, they tell you everything we just taught you in college was a lie. Here's the truth. We actually don't know what happened, but we're going to help you try to figure out how we figured out what we think happened. And that's true. That's true. Ask any history major. That's the first thing they tell you, is that everything we've taught you is a lie. We don't know what happened. We only have a limited amount of things to work on. This is why here's how we arrive at what we arrive at. That's what getting a history master's does. It teaches you how to write history and how to figure it out.
How to research.
How to research, right? And so that's, but again, a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions, and part of getting the surgery was getting educated about those misconceptions. And so I feel like it's so important to try to educate people that, but the pushback on it's so bad. It's so bad. Like 4chan's Fit Board and like the bodybuilding forums are like, I can't believe what a stupid fucking cookie is. I couldn't believe, And I'm just like, I'm just telling you what my doctor told me. Well, your doctor's an enabler. No, he's literally the opposite of an enabler. He literally is trying to rip this fat off of my body as fast as he can. That's exactly what I paid him $20,000 for, cash out of my fucking pocket, out of my savings, man. And, and he's earning his fucking keep, but it's so fascinating because everybody thinks they're an armchair doctor, and it sucks. Because I don't know. I've literally sat through 100 hours of classes in order to qualify for the surgery, and even I don't know. Less than 100 hours, but still, many classes. And even I don't know. So anybody who hasn't done the research that I've done, how do you know? And my doctor has a degree, and even he'll tell you he doesn't know. This is what we think, how it works.
Every person's body's different and reacts differently. Some people burn fat easier than others. I mean, we all knew that kid down the block. You'd always have I remember the kid Bobby. He always had a king sized Reese's peanut butter cup with 5 of them. Never shared them.
Yum.
Thin as a rail. If I ate that, I'd be fat.
Exactly.
He was eating it and he was thin. And that's just the way it works out sometimes.
But there is still that hard and fast rule of it is still calories in versus calories out. Eat less, move more. That's it. That's all there is to it. That's the only way to do it. So.
But I'm glad to see you you're moving around now.
It's great, man. It's funny. Yeah. My wife's out of town right now, and she's helping out with a family member. Her grandfather's very sick, stuff like that, and so she's going to be out of town for the next couple of weeks, and that sucks. But a year ago, I couldn't have been alone like this. I would have had to hire in-home help. I would have had to done all kinds of things. Even a month before the surgery, I couldn't have done this. But now I'm able to take care of the dog, take care of the house and stuff like that. Still run the business, still be able to do that stuff. And then on top of that, I'm able to actually exercise a little bit. I can't take the dog fully around our block yet, but I can get him out in the front for a while, and we can play together now. And I can lean over to pick up stuff out of the floor, which is something I couldn't do 3 months ago. And I'm able to sit longer and move longer and stand longer and drive. I haven't been able to drive in a really long time, and my knee's kind of keeping me from doing it right now. But there's a period of time where it was difficult to even turn the wheel because even in our massive car, which was a 2005, because it was one of the best fitting cars I could get, I could barely drive the thing because of how big I was.
Then it's baby steps. You see the baby steps, and that keeps you going forward.
Right.
So maybe a few months from now you can walk around the block, and then maybe a year from now you can walk a mile or a few miles.
And in our support group for my surgery, we call that non-scale victories, right? And the scale victories is the important one. We all know that, and we all care about that. But at the end of the day, clothes fitting you better, or being able to buy something off the rack, or being able to have better sex, or to be able to participate in life more, or being able to do different stuff, or whatever it is, whatever your non-scale victories are. For me, it's finally being able to sit comfortably for the first time in a while, lay down comfortably for the first time in a while, play with my dog. The better sex is one of them, and stuff like that. It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it's so motivating, and it's so much better than food. And when I was trapped in this body, and I was trapped at my biggest, and I was in all that chronic pain before the surgery, and before that surgery took a huge amount of weight off me very quickly. Food was one of the only things that would end the pain. Food was one of the only things that made it enjoyable. And, I'm really stressed right now, and I'm probably not doing as good as I could be right now. I think yesterday I had 1,700 calories, which is pretty fucking high. But at the end of the day, food just doesn't do it for me anymore. What does it for me is be able to do the things I've never been able to do, right? And by the end of this year, I want to go to every PAX I can. I want to go to RTX. I want to go to VidCon and the Game Awards and the PlayStation Experience. And you know, the guys up at Microsoft have asked me to come out there 1,000 times to come out to the headquarters and tour the campus. And I want to do it. I want to do all this stuff. I want to take my wife finally on our honeymoon together. We never got to take a honeymoon. I want to take her to Disneyland or Disney World. We've been to Disneyland a bunch of times, but be able to actually ride the rides the next time at Disneyland and be able to do all of those things. And it's so much more important than food. But it wasn't when I was trapped, when those things were never going to be an option. And I didn't believe they would be an option, you know. And I didn't have that surgery to serve as a, you know, and I mean, it's a very good surgery, but also as a placebo effect or as a, you know, something that pushed me in the right direction. Maybe it's the spending of the money or the taking of the classes or whatever it is.
This was the forceful action to get you
right,
to do
right,
it.
to get it
to know.
right, and to get my mind around it and get myself into the right place. You know, it's so funny. I had a guy who I met on Fark.com, if you're familiar with that website.
That sounds familiar, but I haven't heard of it in a while.
It was kind of like a Reddit back in the day.
That's right.
But I was very active on that website, and one guy, I posted a picture of myself there, and he wrote me immediately and asked me about my weight and size and whether or not I'd ever thought about gastric bypass. And I said yes. And if I could ever qualify for the surgery, I'll get it. And I actually qualified for the surgery roughly 5 or 6 years ago. There was a surgeon in Texas who was going to do it, even at my weight at 600 pounds. But I wanted to wait to increase my chances of success, and I wanted to wait to increase my chances of survival. The more weight I lost before we got that surgery done, the better chance I would live. But I hesitated because that guy taught me that I had to be mentally ready before I could do the work. And unfortunately, my window was closing. I was walking around with a blood pressure of 210 over 120. I was ready to pop any moment. And that's with a bunch of blood medication in me. And I was taking diabetes medication, and I was borderline needing insulin on top of the medication. So I was ready to die. I'm lucky I didn't have a stroke or heart attack already. And so we had to get the surgery, even though I didn't think I was fully ready. I think mentally I had more work to do. But I'm glad I didn't do it when I was 30. The opportunity never presented itself, but if I did, I would have screwed it up. I certainly haven't screwed it up, and I'm not going to now because I'm finally in a very good place. So I think that's one of the, you know, somebody asked me on stream the other day, said, my sister's eating herself to death like you were. How do I keep her from doing it? What can I say? And I'm like, what could you say to someone who had cancer to convince them not to have cancer? Like, you can't, right? She's got a disease, dude. She's got a mental illness. If somebody gets to 300 pounds, 400 pounds, 500 pounds, that's not somebody just like snacks, dude. That's somebody's a fucking problem, right? You can try to encourage her to work on that problem and discover what that problem is. That's the best you can do, but there's nothing you can do to fix her, dude. She's got to do the work. You can motivate her to do the work, but even that, until she's ready, she won't do it. And that's the problem I faced for a long, long time. Well, my wife intervened, and YouTube intervened, and the audience that's listening right now intervened, and you know, Jay and the guys at Retropalooza were one of the first cons I ever got invited to, one of the very first things, and Major Nelson and Adam, you know, Major Nelson from Xbox and Adam from PlayStation, they intervened, and then when they did, it showed me, you know, and even going back to Ray William Johnson, or even the first person to click subscribe, that built a life that was worth fighting for, you know? And I finally got to the point that I was ready. And I'm glad to do the work.
I'm really proud of you. It's only going to get better and better from here. And every few months, you'll figure out something that you couldn't do before that. Now you're like, oh my God, now I can do this. Now I can do that. And you'll think about life before versus now, and you can't imagine it going back to the way it was.
Exactly.
You know, it's going to be a separation. It'd be almost two lives.
Exactly.
At that point.
And I'll tell you this, man. My biggest issue now is the chronic pain stuff. And it's that my doctors have all told me it'll get worse before it gets better, especially with the back and the knees. They said you've spent a long time slowly compressing them, and now you're going to spend a short time decompressing them. And so it's going to be much more painful during the decompression part than it was for it to be compressed. And that sucks, and they were right. It is very bad. But if that's the only thing that keeps me from jogging every day, it's the only thing that keeps me from being on a treadmill 4 hours a day, it's the only thing that keeps me from joining my local gym and hitting the pool. If you can figure out how to get me out of this chronic pain, you won't stop me. I've sat on my ass for the majority of my life. I'm done doing it. I don't want to do it anymore. The only thing that makes me do it now is the fact that I physically am in too much pain to do those things. But the day I'm not, I'll never touch one of those fucking Mark carts again. I will never rent one of those things at a con again. I will jog from one end of VidCon to the next. I will carry my wife on my shoulders if I can. You know?
I remember when I finally, the first time I started running, when I started losing my weight in college, and for the first 2 weeks or so, it was like hell on earth where I couldn't run a block and a half without my lungs feeling they're going to explode.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day when I managed to actually like run and jog a mile without stopping. And I was like, it was like an epiphany. It was like, oh my God, this is how I'm supposed to be. This is how my body's supposed to function. And it's the first time I'm ever experiencing that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're moving towards that, which is great. And the pain, I don't know much about decompression of joints and how that works, but in theory, less weight on your joints, the easier it'll get.
Yep.
You know,
right. And that's
point.
the hope. The good news is with the back, we were never able to do the MRI again, so they don't really know what's going on back there. I was too heavy even for an X-ray, so they have no clue what I've done to my back yet. Me and my doctors are waiting till I get under 400, which is pretty close now. I think it's about 2 months away. So probably sometime in January and February, we will be able to finally get that MRI and finally get the X-rays and finally figure out what's wrong with my back. And maybe there's a solution. And if there is, all my Twitch streams are going to stop being video game streams. They're going to be workout streams. We're going to do them live from the swimming pool, and it's just going to be awesome. I just can't wait. I just can't wait.
Well, I'll see you at a future convention. We'll go down to the hotel gym together and walk on the treadmill. Let's do that.
Yeah, me, you, and we'll bench press Billy.
All right, not that people need to know, but Steven, where can everyone find you on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Twitch?
You can follow me at youtube.com/boogie2988. Again, you might know me better as my character Francis, so you can search Francis on YouTube. You'll find me. I'm also on Twitch TV, twitch.tv/boogie2988. I have a website at boogieplays.com that gives you short links to all this stuff, and including a merch store. And probably my most active place on social media is twitter.com. So twitter.com/boogie2988. Great place to hear me whine about stupid shit all day long and post pictures of my dog, my adorable little dog. You guys want to see Sammy here real quick? Hold on. Sammy? He's grumpy right now because he's sleeping.
Look at that little guy.
Yeah. He is, he's super sleepy right now, so he's super grumpy. But I just wanted to show him off a little bit. All right.
And I'm Pat Contra. You can find me on Twitter and on YouTube, Pat the NES.
And I will say, if you don't know Pat, you really should get to know him, man. He is, I do love your podcast. I do love your work. I love your channel. The book is fantastic, again, by the way. I do recommend that immediately to anybody who's watching this. But that said, Pat, I'm so glad we got a chance to talk today. I've loved talking to you at Retropalooza. It seems like we never got a chance to just sit down and chew the fat, so I'm glad we got to do it today. Hope we do it again soon, my friend.
And you can find the book at ultimatenes.com. Yeah, I'll plug it real quick. Thanks so much, Steven.
You are welcome,
see you later.
my friend. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of the Not So Common Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please think about subscribing on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Store, or whatever you use to listen to them. You can like the podcast, spread the word via social media to let others know how much you enjoy it. Finally, if you want to help directly support me and the Not So Common Podcast, please consider signing up for my Patreon at patreon.com/PatContry. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.